Hey everyone, and welcome back to the English Conversation Podcast. I'm Mike, and today I've got my co-host Lily here with me. Lily, great to have you in the studio. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Mike. Excited to dive into today's episode because honestly, this is a topic I think so many of our listeners have experienced firsthand. You spend years and years in school studying English, right? You memorize all these grammar rules, you ace your tests, you feel like you've got this language down pat. Then boom, you start your first job at a multinational company and suddenly everything feels like you've stepped into a completely different world.
Oh man, that's such a relatable experience. It's like you've been studying this technical manual your whole life, but nobody at your job actually reads from that manual. They're all speaking in this completely different dialect that somehow everyone understands except you. The English from your textbooks is technically correct, absolutely, but it comes across as formal, stiff, and honestly kind of robotic. That's not how real colleagues actually communicate with each other on a daily basis. Exactly. And that disconnect can be really frustrating. You know you speak English, you know the grammar, you understand the vocabulary, but something just feels off when you're in meetings or having conversations with native speakers at work. Today, we're going to change that. We're going to show you the actual, real English that gets things done in professional environments. Not the textbook version, not the overly formal version, but the genuine, friendly, and effective English that native speakers use every single day.
And here's what makes today's episode special. We're not going to bore you with a list of random phrases and expressions that you need to memorize. Instead, we're going to tell you a story. We're going to follow two colleagues, Marcus and Jennifer, through their first week working together on an important new project. You'll hear them in formal meetings, see how they write emails to each other, and even catch them having casual conversations by the water cooler. Through their story, you'll naturally learn how to sound polite without being robotic, how to push back against ideas without offending people, and how to use all those phrasal verbs and idioms that native speakers throw around constantly. The cool thing about learning through story is that you're not just memorizing rules. You're seeing real context. You're hearing how these expressions actually sound when native speakers use them. You're understanding when to use them and why they're so much more effective than the formal alternatives. It makes everything click in a way that a grammar textbook just can't achieve. So, Mike, should we jump right into our story?
Let's do it. Our story begins early on a Monday morning. Marcus and Jennifer have just been called into their manager's office. There's a new high-priority project that's just been dropped on their desks, and nobody really knows much about it yet. Their manager wants to have a quick kickoff meeting to get everyone oriented. Let's listen to the beginning of that meeting. Good morning, both of you. Thanks so much for making time on short notice. I wanted to reach out today about this new digital transformation initiative that just came down from the executives. Our main goal for this meeting is to start things rolling and make absolutely certain that we're all working from the same information and the same understanding from this point forward. I'm really counting on both of you to help make this project successful, so let's make sure we're crystal clear on everything before we move ahead.
Okay, let's pause right there for a second, Mike. In that short opening, did you catch how the manager used several really important workplace expressions? There were at least 4 key phrases in there that show the difference between textbook English and authentic professional English.
I definitely caught a few. Let's break them down for our listeners. The first one was, I wanted to reach out today about. That right there is a classic workplace phrase. Your textbook might teach you to say, I need to talk to you about the digital transformation initiative, but a native speaker will say, I wanted to reach out about, because it sounds collaborative, it's softer, and it acknowledges that you're taking someone's time.
Absolutely. Let's practice it together. Say it with me. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to reach out about the project. It sounds much more natural than I want to discuss or I need to tell you about. The second expression was start things rolling. This is a phrasal verb that means to begin something or to initiate something.
Instead of saying, let's begin the meeting or let's start this initiative, saying, let's get things rolling sounds more energetic, more modern, and more action-oriented. It conveys momentum. That's a good one. And the third phrase was working from the same information, or really, on the same page. That's probably one of the most important expressions for teamwork. When you're on the same page with someone, it means you have the same understanding, the same information, and the same expectations about a situation. Managers will say this constantly because it's crucial to avoid misunderstandings and mistakes down the road. And that brings us to the fourth key phrase, crystal clear. Instead of just saying clear or understood, using intensifiers like crystal clear, absolutely clear, or 100% clear is really common in native speech. It emphasizes that there's absolutely no ambiguity or confusion about what you're discussing. It shows you take the matter seriously. All right, so the meeting wraps up. Marcus and Jennifer have their tasks for the week, and everyone heads back to their desks. But later that same afternoon, Marcus realizes he's actually pretty confused about one of his assignments. He's not 100% sure what his manager meant by compile the market research data. Should he be doing preliminary analysis? Should he just be gathering information? He decides he needs to reach out to Jennifer because she seems to understand the project better. He decides to send her an email. Now this is where the difference between textbook English and real professional English becomes really obvious. Oh, absolutely. A textbook version might sound something like this. Dear Jennifer, I hope this communication finds you well. I am writing to you in order to request clarification regarding my assigned responsibilities on the aforementioned project. The parameters of my task are unclear, and I require additional information and specific guidance. Please respond at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Marcus. Wow, that sounds like a robot wrote it. That sounds like a formal letter from the 1950s. If I received an email like that from a colleague, I'd genuinely be concerned that either they're extremely upset with me or they don't realize that we work in the same office and see each other every single day. It's just way too formal. So let's talk about what Marcus would actually write.
Here's what an actual native speaker would write in this situation. First, the subject line. Instead of clarification regarding assigned responsibilities, Marcus would write something like, quick question about the market research task, or need your input on the research project. It's specific, it's friendly, and it immediately tells Jennifer what the email is about without being stuffy.
Then the greeting. Dear Jennifer is technically correct, but it's not really how colleagues typically greet each other in emails. You'd be way more likely to see hi Jennifer, hey Jennifer, or even just Jennifer if you're in a really casual workplace. The greeting sets the tone for the entire email, so you want it to feel friendly and approachable. Going too formal right at the start signals that something might be wrong.
Now, for the body of the email, instead of that incredibly stiff opening, Marcus would write something much more natural. He might say, hey Jennifer, I wanted to follow up on something from this morning's meeting. I'm a bit confused about the market research part of my assignment. Could you walk me through exactly what you're looking for? I want to make sure I'm on the right track before I dive in. Let me know what you think when you have a minute. Thanks, Marcus.
So much better. Let's break down the great language here. First, he uses, I wanted to follow up on something. This is a perfect expression for circling back to something that was discussed earlier. It's common in emails when you're returning to a topic. Say it with us. I wanted to follow up. I wanted to follow up on the research assignment. This phrase is so useful because it's respectful and it acknowledges that both parties have busy schedules.
Then he says, I'm a bit confused about. This is a softer, more collaborative way of saying, I don't understand, or I'm confused. Using a bit softens it. A bit confused is less dramatic than completely lost or totally confused. It shows vulnerability in a professional way. Then he asks a really important question. Could you walk me through exactly what you're looking for? The phrase walk me through means to explain something step by step. It's much more natural than please explain in detail or I require clarification.
Absolutely. And notice his next sentence. I want to make sure I'm on the right track before I dive in. This shows initiative and responsibility. He's not just asking for help, he's showing that he wants to do good work. On the right track means heading in the correct direction, doing things correctly. Dive in means to start working on something enthusiastically. These are exactly the kinds of expressions that make you sound like a native speaker.
Finally, he closes with, let me know what you think when you have a minute. This is so much better than please respond at your earliest convenience. This closing respects Jennifer's time. It's friendly and it's casual. When you have a minute, acknowledges that she's busy, but shows confidence that she'll get to it. The whole email probably took him 2 minutes to write, but it sounds natural, professional, and collaborative.
So Jennifer gets the email, reads it, and actually walks over to Marcus's desk instead of replying via email. This is something that happens all the time in real workplaces. People prefer quick conversations to long email chains. So Marcus and Jennifer are now face to face, and Marcus wants to ask if Jennifer can help him. This is another crucial moment where textbook English falls apart.
Imagine if Marcus said, excuse me, Jennifer. I have a question that requires your expertise and assistance. Would you be available to help me with a work-related matter? That sounds awful. Nobody actually talks like that. Here's what really happens. Marcus looks up and says, hey, Jennifer, do you have a quick second? I'm absolutely swamped with the financial projections for next quarter. And honestly, I could really use your help understanding what they want for the research section. Could you give me a hand?
Let's analyze this short interaction. First, he says, do you have a quick second? This is literally the #1 way to politely interrupt a colleague. It's short for, do you have a second? And it shows you respect their time. You're asking permission before you launch into your question. This is so much better than just starting to talk or saying, are you busy? Everyone's always busy.
Then he uses the expression, I'm absolutely swamped. To be swamped means to be overwhelmed with work, to have way too much on your plate. It's much more descriptive and emotional than just saying, I'm busy. When you say, I'm swamped, people can really picture how overwhelmed you are. They understand the urgency. We use vivid language all the time in real English.
And then Marcus says, could you give me a hand? This is a super common expression that means, could you help me? It's friendly and collaborative. It's so much better than, please assist me, or I require your help. Give me a hand shows you see the other person as a team member, not as a subordinate or a superior. It builds a sense of togetherness. Now, let's think about what Jennifer says in response.
Oh, sure. Of course. I can help. No problem at all. Let me just save my document really quickly and I'll be right there. Tell me what you're not understanding and we'll figure it out together. Notice she says, no problem at all. This is a classic way to agree to help. It's much warmer than, yes, I will assist you, or I understand your request. She also uses let me really quickly, which is a natural way to indicate you're doing something fast. And we'll figure it out together, shows she's collaborative.
Exactly. Then they sit down and Marcus explains his confusion. Jennifer points out what he's missing, and Marcus is really grateful. He says, thanks so much, Jennifer. You're a lifesaver. I totally owe you one for this. Breaking down I owe you one, this is a wonderful expression that means I am grateful and I will return the favor in the future. It builds positive relationships and shows appreciation in a genuine way.
And Jennifer probably responds with something like, oh, please, it's nothing. We're all on the same team here. And hey, if you get stuck again, just swing by my desk anytime. We can pick this up later if you need anything else. Notice she says swing by my desk, which is casual and friendly. We can pick this up later means we can continue this conversation later. It keeps the door open for future collaboration.
This whole interaction shows real workplace dynamics. It's collaborative, it's friendly, it's efficient, and it builds trust. That's authentic English in action. Our listeners are probably starting to see the pattern here. Real workplace English is less about formal rules and more about relationship building and collaboration. So we're now at Wednesday of that same week, and things are starting to get complicated. Marcus and Jennifer have been working hard on their project deliverables, but Marcus has been thinking about the timeline, and he's starting to feel worried. The first draft is supposed to be ready by Friday, but looking at everything that still needs to be done, he's not sure it's actually possible to deliver quality work by then.
This is such a real situation that every single person in professional life has faced. You're assigned a deadline, you start working, and then reality hits. You realize you can't possibly meet it without either cutting corners or working yourself to death. So, how do you handle this conversation? A textbook might tell you to say something very direct, like, I cannot finish the task by Friday. The deadline is impossible. But that sounds confrontational and unhelpful. It sounds like you're just giving bad news without any solution.
A native speaker would approach this conversation completely differently. They would be indirect, they would acknowledge the challenge, they would explain their reasoning, and most importantly, they would come with a solution. Let's listen to how this actually goes down. Marcus schedules a quick conversation with Jennifer. He walks over to her desk and says something like this.
Hey, Jennifer. Do you have about 5 or 10 minutes to grab a quick coffee and chat about something on my mind regarding the project timeline?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just finish this thought and I'm all yours. Give me like 2 seconds and we can head to the break room.
Perfect. So I've been looking over everything we have left to do, and I wanted to be completely honest with you about the Friday deadline. It's not looking super realistic for me to get everything done by then and have it actually be good quality work. Like, we talked about including detailed analysis for each section, and that takes time. I don't want to rush it and then have you or the manager feeling disappointed.
Okay, I hear you. I was kind of thinking the same thing, to be honest. What are you thinking we should do about it?
Well, I was wondering if it might be possible to push the deadline back to Monday morning instead. That would give me the weekend to really polish everything, make sure all the analysis is solid, and ensure we're turning in something we're actually proud of. Would that timeline work for you and the manager?
Let me check the project calendar. Yeah, I think that could work. Monday morning should be fine. Actually, thanks for bringing this up early, because if we waited until Thursday afternoon to figure this out, we'd be in real trouble.
Okay, so let's analyze exactly what Marcus did right here. First, he used softening language throughout. He didn't say the deadline is impossible. He said it's not looking super realistic. He said, I don't want to rush it. These phrases are softer, but they communicate the same message. The word super in not super realistic is a softener. It makes the statement feel less harsh.
Exactly. And then he provided his reasoning. We talked about including detailed analysis for each section, and that takes time. He's not just complaining, he's explaining why the deadline is challenging. He's focusing on quality, not on his own laziness. He says, I don't want to rush it and then have you or the manager feeling disappointed. This shows he cares about the work quality and about the team's perception.
And here's the most important part. Marcus came with a solution. He didn't just identify the problem, he suggested a specific alternative deadline. I was wondering if it might be possible to push the deadline back to Monday morning instead. Notice the softening language here too. I was wondering if it might be possible is very indirect and very polite. It's a suggestion, not a demand. The phrase push the deadline back is a phrasal verb that means to move the deadline to a later date.
And he explains why Monday works better. That would give me the weekend to really polish everything. Polish means to refine and perfect. It shows he's thinking about continuous improvement. He's making a logical case for why this new deadline would result in better work. He's not being lazy, he's being professional.
Jennifer responded really well too. Instead of immediately saying yes or no, she said, "Let me check the project calendar." She's checking to make sure the new deadline doesn't conflict with anything else. That's responsible project management. And then she gives her approval. But notice what she says at the end. "Actually, thanks for bringing this up early, because if we waited until Thursday afternoon to figure this out, we'd be in real trouble."
This is so important. Jennifer is recognizing that Marcus was being proactive and responsible. By bringing up the concern early on Wednesday, rather than waiting until Thursday or Friday, Marcus gave the team time to adjust. This is a key aspect of professional communication. You don't surprise people at the last second, you communicate problems early so they can adjust their plans.
This whole interaction demonstrates something really critical that doesn't get taught in textbooks. In a professional environment, how you communicate problems is just as important as the actual problem itself. If Marcus had walked in and said, "I can't do it," that would be a negative interaction. Instead, he demonstrated understanding of the constraints, provided clear reasoning, and offered a solution. That transforms it into a positive, collaborative conversation.
And this is why these soft expressions and indirect phrasings are so valuable. They're not about being weak or unclear. They're about creating space for dialogue and collaboration. They're about building relationships while you solve problems. That's the real purpose of these expressions that native speakers use all the time.
So the rest of the week continues. Marcus and Jennifer finish their report, and they're both pretty happy with how it turned out. But then they sit down together to review the final draft on Friday afternoon before they submit it to their manager, and something unexpected happens. They actually disagree on how to structure one particular section of the report. This is going to be our next major learning moment.
So Marcus is looking at the report, and he says, "Hey Jennifer, I've been thinking about the market analysis section, and I wonder if we should move all of that detailed data into the appendix instead of having it in the main report. It's just a lot of numbers and tables, and I think it might be distracting to readers who are trying to follow the main argument."
I see where you're coming from, and I appreciate the thinking, but I'm honestly not totally convinced that's the right call. The way I see it, that data is actually central to the argument we're making. If we hide it in an appendix, I think we lose some of our impact. What if we instead tried putting it into a visual format? Like, what if we created a chart or a graph that shows the key information without overwhelming people with raw numbers?
Now, this is a crucial moment in professional relationships. This is where disagreement can either become destructive or become collaborative. Let's analyze what Jennifer did really well here. First, she validated Marcus's thinking. She said, "I see where you're coming from, and I appreciate the thinking." This is absolutely critical. When you start a disagreement, you never want to make the other person feel like you weren't listening or that their idea is stupid.
The phrase, "I see where you're coming from," is golden in professional communication. It means, "I understand your perspective," or "I understand why you're thinking that way." It shows respect and acknowledgement. Then Jennifer says, "I appreciate the thinking." She's complimenting the effort and the thought process, even though she disagrees with the conclusion. This is so much better than just saying, "No, that won't work," or "I disagree."
Then she presents her own perspective. She says, "But I'm honestly not totally convinced." This is another key phrase for disagreement. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," or "I don't agree," she says, "I'm not totally convinced." She's making it about her perspective, not about attacking his idea. She's saying this is her view, not making a universal statement that his view is incorrect.
Then she explains her reasoning. The way I see it, that data is actually central to the argument we're making. If we hide it in an appendix, I think we lose some of our impact. She's providing clear logic for why she thinks her approach is better. She's not just disagreeing to be difficult, she's providing substantive reasons.
And crucially, and this is what makes Jennifer's approach so effective, she doesn't stop with the disagreement. She immediately offers an alternative solution. She says, what if we instead tried putting it into a visual format? Like, what if we created a chart or a graph that shows the key information without overwhelming people with raw numbers? She's using the phrase, what if we tried, which opens a dialogue. It's collaborative.
This completely changes the dynamic of the conversation. Instead of Jennifer just saying, I disagree, she's actually solved the underlying problem. Marcus was worried about the data being overwhelming and distracting. Jennifer's solution addresses that concern while keeping the data visible. It's brilliant communication strategy.
And how does Marcus respond? He says, oh, actually, you know what? That's a really fair point. A chart would definitely work better than raw tables. It would be cleaner, and it would still let readers see the actual numbers if they want. Let's definitely go with that approach. Marcus is using the phrase, that's a fair point. This is another golden phrase for professional communication. It means, that's a good idea, or I acknowledge that what you're saying makes sense.
Notice that Marcus doesn't say something like, well, I guess you're right and I was wrong. He says, that's a fair point, which shows he respects Jennifer's thinking. Using fair point acknowledges that her argument has merit without making it seem like he was completely wrong and she was completely right. It maintains mutual respect. He then explains why her idea works, which shows he's genuinely considering it, not just accepting it to end the argument.
This is such a contrast to how disagreement gets handled in textbooks. You might learn to say, I disagree with you, or even be taught that I must respectfully disagree. But that language is formal and can feel confrontational. What Jennifer and Marcus actually did was way more subtle and way more effective. They disagreed without ever using the word disagree. They acknowledged each other's points, they explained their reasoning, and they found a solution together.
I think what's really important for our listeners to understand is that this type of communication isn't about being weak or avoiding conflict. It's actually about being more effective. When you use these softer, more collaborative phrases, you're actually more likely to influence people because you're not putting them on the defensive. You're not making it about winning or losing. You're making it about solving the problem together.
Exactly. And look what happened. They took what could have been a contentious disagreement and turned it into a collaborative brainstorming session that made the report better. That's what real workplace English does. It facilitates better outcomes. These expressions aren't just nice to have, they're actually functional and strategic.
So now they've resolved their disagreement, they've incorporated Jennifer's chart idea into the report, and they submit it to their manager on Monday morning as planned. The manager reads through it and a few days later calls them both into a meeting to give feedback.
The manager walks them through the entire report, and overall, she's really pleased. She says, I want to say up front that you both did an excellent job on this. The research is thorough, the analysis is solid, and I appreciate how you structured the arguments. The market data visualization you included was really smart. That's exactly the kind of thinking I want to see.
This is interesting because the manager is starting with positive feedback. In professional communication, this is super common. You'll hear phrases like, I want to say up front, or, first of all, I want to acknowledge that. These are ways to establish a positive tone before you move into areas for improvement. The manager continues, there are just a couple of things I'd like you to think about for the next phase. The introduction is solid, but it could be even stronger if you gave a bit more context about why this market research matters to our organization specifically.
She's using really soft language here too. She doesn't say, your introduction is weak, or you missed important context. She says, "It could be even stronger if," and "I'd like you to think about." This is constructive feedback language. She's treating Marcus and Jennifer as capable professionals who can improve their own work once they understand the perspective.
Then the manager says, and just one more thought. Make sure you're connecting each finding back to the business implications. Sometimes you present the data, but the reader has to make the leap themselves to understand why it matters to our company. If you spell that out, it becomes way more powerful. She's using the word just to soften the feedback. Just one more thought. And she's being very specific about what to improve and why.
Thank you so much for the feedback. That's really helpful. I actually didn't think about it from that angle before, and that makes a lot of sense. We can definitely revise the introduction to build in more of that company context. And I appreciate you pointing out the business implications thing. We kind of got so focused on the data that we didn't explicitly make those connections. We'll fix that for the next round.
This is such a good response. Marcus is demonstrating that he's genuinely listening and that he's willing to incorporate the feedback. He says, "Thank you so much for the feedback." He doesn't get defensive, he doesn't argue, he actually acknowledges that the manager's perspective helped him see something he missed. He says, "I actually didn't think about it from that angle before, and that makes a lot of sense." This shows intellectual humility.
Then he gets specific about what he'll do. We can definitely revise the introduction, and we'll fix that for the next round. He's making a commitment to improvement. He's showing accountability. And he's keeping it collaborative by saying we instead of I. That shows he and Jennifer are a team.
The manager then says, "Great! I'm really glad we're on the same page. I want you both to know that this kind of collaborative work is exactly what helps people advance in their careers here. I can see you two work really well together, and that's valuable. Let's talk about the next phase of the project."
This is such an important moment because the manager is acknowledging not just the quality of the work, but also the quality of the working relationship. She says, "You two work really well together, and that's valuable." This is recognition that professional relationships matter as much as individual performance. And she sets up the next phase by saying, "Let's talk about the next phase of the project."
So as they're leaving the meeting, Jennifer turns to Marcus and says, "Man, that went really well. I'm glad we're continuing with this project. I've learned so much working with you, and honestly, I think we make a pretty good team. You're really good at seeing the big picture, and I'm kind of more detail-oriented, so we balance each other out." Marcus responds, "I completely agree, and I really appreciate how you handled that disagreement we had about the data visualization. The way you presented that alternative actually made me a better thinker about the stuff."
This is real, authentic workplace culture at its best. These two colleagues are building a genuine working relationship based on mutual respect, collaboration, and clear communication. And all of that happened because they used the right language: soft language, collaborative language, solution-focused language.
I think it's really important for our listeners to understand that these expressions and phrases we've been discussing aren't just nice-to-haves. They're actually how professional relationships get built. When you use these collaborative, indirect, soft approaches, you're building trust. You're showing that you respect other people. You're demonstrating that you care about outcomes more than ego.
And that's what makes someone successful in a professional environment. Technical skills matter, sure, but your ability to communicate, to collaborate, to handle disagreement, to give and receive feedback, that's what makes the difference between someone who has a job and someone who builds a career.
So, over the next couple of weeks, Marcus and Jennifer continue working on the project. They have more meetings, they send more emails, they have more conversations. And each time, they use these same principles. They use soft language, they're collaborative, they focus on solutions, they build relationships.
One of the things that's really interesting about workplace English is that not all of it happens in formal meetings or official emails. A lot of the most important communication happens in quick, casual conversations. These are the moments that build culture and relationships. For instance, Marcus is working late on a Thursday, and he's stuck on a particular analysis. He decides to send Jennifer a quick message saying, "Hey Jennifer, I know it's getting late, but I'm totally stuck on this analysis. Would you have 5 minutes to quickly look at my approach and let me know if I'm on the right track? I promise I'm almost done for the day."
This is a great example of casual communication, but it's still professional. He's using phrases like, "I know it's getting late," which shows consideration for her time. He's using, "I'm totally stuck," which is conversational and honest. He's using, "Would you have 5 minutes?" which is a polite way to ask for time. And he's using, "Let me know if I'm on the right track," which shows he wants guidance, not necessarily a complete solution.
Jennifer responds pretty quickly. "Sure thing. Send me over what you've got. I've got like 10 minutes before I need to take off. Walk me through your thinking, and I'll see if I can spot anything." Notice she says "sure thing," which is a casual, friendly agreement. "Walk me through your thinking" is that phrase we talked about earlier. It means explain it step by step. She's being helpful and efficient.
So Marcus sends over his analysis, and Jennifer looks at it. She responds, "Okay, so I see what you're trying to do, and it makes sense. But I think you might be overcomplicating the second part. What if you tried simplifying it like this?" She's using, "I see what you're trying to do, and it makes sense." Then she gently suggests an alternative. She says, "What if you tried," which is collaborative language.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so much cleaner. Why didn't I think of that? You're amazing. Seriously, I owe you big time.
Then, the next morning, they're both in the break room getting coffee, and Marcus sees Jennifer. He says, "Hey, I just wanted to say thanks again for helping me out yesterday evening. That simplification you suggested turned everything else in the analysis into place. It made the whole thing click. You've seriously made this project so much better." This is what we call a follow-up appreciation. It's not just thanking someone in the moment, it's circling back later to emphasize how valuable their help was.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. I'm just glad it helped. That's what we're here for, right? We're all trying to make each other better. She's being gracious and deflecting some of the praise, which is common. She's also emphasizing the team aspect. She says, "That's what we're here for, and we're all trying to make each other better," which shows she sees this as part of the team culture, not as a special favor.
These kinds of interactions might seem small, but they're absolutely crucial. They're the foundation of a healthy work culture. People remember how you treat them. People remember who's willing to help, who's appreciative, who's collaborative, and all of that comes through in how you communicate.
Now, let's shift gears a little bit. Marcus and Jennifer's project is going well, but there's been some organizational changes. A new team member, David, has just joined the department. David is from outside the company, so he doesn't know the internal processes or the unspoken rules yet. Marcus decides to take him under his wing a bit and help him get up to speed.
"Hey, David, how's your first week going? Getting everything set up okay?" "Yeah, it's been pretty overwhelming, to be honest. Everyone seems great, but there's so much I don't know. The systems are different from my last company. The terminology is different. Everything feels unfamiliar."
Marcus says, "That's totally normal. I remember feeling the same way when I started. Listen, I don't want to overwhelm you, but I'd like to help you get up to speed faster. There are a few unspoken rules around here that nobody officially teaches you. Do you want to grab lunch today and I can fill you in on some of this stuff?" Notice he's being really considerate here. He says, "I don't want to overwhelm you," which shows he understands David might be feeling a lot of information coming at him.
"Yeah, that would be amazing. I really appreciate you offering. I have so many questions." Marcus says, Perfect. Let's meet at the cafe around noon. I'll walk you through how things work around here, the key people you should know, and how to handle some situations that come up pretty regularly.
Over lunch, Marcus explains things like the informal communication channels, who actually makes decisions versus who has the official title, how projects get prioritized, what's important to the management team. He says things like, so officially, all communication goes through email and the project management system, but between you and me, a lot of important conversations happen in quick chats at people's desks or in the break room. So don't ignore those informal channels. They're actually where a lot of decisions get made.
He's being honest about how the organization actually works versus how it's supposed to work on paper. He's preparing David for real-world success. He continues, and here's a pro tip. When you're dealing with our VP of operations, she really values directness and efficiency. She doesn't want a lot of fluff. But with the finance director, he likes to understand the context and the reasoning behind everything. So when you're communicating with different people, adjust your style based on what works for them.
This is such an important aspect of professional success that doesn't get taught in language classes. Different people have different communication preferences. Some people like data and facts. Some people like context and stories. Some people want quick, efficient communication. Some people want more thorough explanation. David is learning from Marcus how to adapt his communication style to different audiences.
By the end of the lunch, David feels so much more confident. He says, "Wow, this is incredibly helpful. I feel like I have a real roadmap now. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this." Marcus responds, "Of course. We all need help getting started. If anything else comes up, just reach out. My door is always open."
This interaction demonstrates something really crucial. Being effective in a professional environment isn't just about using the right phrases. It's about genuinely caring about helping people succeed. It's about sharing knowledge. It's about building a culture where people help each other.
A few weeks pass, and Marcus is getting more and more responsibility. He's been asked to lead a new sub-project within the larger initiative. This means he'll be managing a small team, including both Jennifer and David. His first official meeting as a team lead is coming up, and he's a bit nervous about striking the right tone. He wants to be a leader, but he doesn't want to come across as bossy or condescending. He wants to maintain the collaborative relationships he's already built.
So he sends an email to his new team. Hi everyone. As you know, I've been asked to lead the website redesign subproject. I want to start by saying that I don't see this as me being in charge. I see it as me being responsible for keeping us organized and making sure we're all aligned on direction. I really value your input and your expertise, and I'm counting on you to keep me honest and speak up if you think something isn't working. Our first team meeting is Friday at 2 p.m. I'll send a quick agenda by tomorrow, but I want to make sure there's plenty of time for discussion and feedback. Looking forward to working together on this.
This is such a smart approach. He's acknowledging his new role, but he's not letting it go to his head. He says, "I don't see this as me being in charge," which shows he's not going to adopt some kind of authoritarian style. He says, "I value your input and your expertise," which signals that he respects his team. And he says, "I'm counting on you to keep me honest and speak up if you think something isn't working," which actually invites them to push back if they disagree.
In the meeting on Friday, Marcus opens by saying, "Thanks everyone for making time for this. I know we're all busy, and I really appreciate it. Before we dive into the project details, I want to set some expectations for how we're going to work together. I think we work best when we're really open with each other, when we feel comfortable disagreeing, and when we focus on the best ideas rather than worrying about who has the best ideas. Does that sound good to everyone?"
Jennifer nods and says, "Absolutely. I think that's what made our earlier work together so effective. We could be honest with each other without it becoming personal." David adds, "Yeah, I think that's great. I'm still learning how things work here, so I might ask a lot of questions. I just want to make sure I'm contributing meaningfully." Marcus responds, That's exactly what I want. Please ask questions. That's how we all learn and get better.
Then Marcus outlines the project. He explains the goals, the timeline, and the deliverables. He says, "So here's what we're aiming for by the end of next quarter. These are pretty ambitious goals, but I think they're achievable if we work together smartly. I've broken things down into phases, and I'll be assigning specific tasks to each of you. But before I do that, I want to hear from you. What kind of work energizes you? What kind of work drains you? Are there particular areas where you want to grow?"
This is such a mature approach to team management. He's not just assigning tasks, he's trying to understand his team members as individuals. He's trying to set them up for success by playing to their strengths and giving them opportunities to develop new skills.
Jennifer says, "I really enjoy the strategic thinking and the big picture stuff. I like seeing how all the pieces fit together. The detailed execution can feel tedious to me, but I know it's important." David says, "I'm still learning the details of how our business works, but I love working with the technology side. I could probably spend all day learning new tools and systems."
Okay, so Jennifer, I'm going to have you involved in the strategy and decision-making meetings. I'll also want your input on how different elements fit together. And David, I'm thinking you'd be perfect for leading our technology implementation. That'll give you exposure to how our systems work while also leveraging your tech skills. Does that sound good?
They both agree enthusiastically. Marcus continues, "Great, and we'll have a team meeting every Friday afternoon to check in on progress and discuss any blockers. I want you to feel comfortable coming to me with problems before they become huge issues. If you're stuck, if something isn't clear, if you're concerned about quality or timeline, just let me know. That's literally my job as your lead, to help you succeed and to solve problems."
Notice throughout this entire meeting, Marcus is using language of collaboration and support, not command and control. He's saying things like, "I want to hear from you. I think we work best when. Please ask questions. I want you to feel comfortable coming to me." This is how you create a team that actually wants to work together, rather than one that just tolerates each other.
Over the next several weeks, Marcus's approach pays off. The team works incredibly efficiently. When Jennifer has concerns about the timeline, she brings them up immediately, rather than waiting until there's a crisis. When David encounters a technical problem he doesn't understand, he feels comfortable asking for help. And they all support each other because they've built that culture of collaboration.
One day, Jennifer comes to Marcus with a significant concern. She says, "Hey Marcus, do you have a few minutes? I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind about the project." Marcus immediately clears his calendar and says, "Of course, let's go grab a conference room where we can talk privately."
Once they're in the conference room, Jennifer says, "So I've been thinking about our current approach to the user experience design, and I'm honestly not totally convinced it's going to meet the user needs the way we've specified them. I don't want to be a downer or throw us off schedule, but I think we might need to reconsider this direction. I looked at some competitors' designs, and they've solved similar problems in different ways that seem more effective."
This is such an important moment. Jennifer is bringing up a significant concern that could affect the project. How Marcus responds will determine whether his team continues to feel comfortable speaking up or whether they start hiding problems.
Marcus's response is perfect. He says, "Jennifer, I'm really glad you brought this up. I would much rather hear about this now than find out in 3 months that we're going in the wrong direction. Walk me through your thinking. What specifically are you concerned about?" He's validating her concern immediately, and he's asking her to explain her reasoning.
Okay, I see your point. I think you're right to raise this. This is a significant enough concern that I think we should bring David in on this conversation because it affects the technical implementation. Let me set up a meeting with all 3 of us tomorrow. We need to figure out the best path forward together.
The next day, they all sit down and discuss it. They talk through the pros and cons of the different approaches. After some good discussion, they decide to pivot slightly on the design direction. David says, I think this approach is actually better for the technology implementation too. It'll be cleaner and more scalable. Marcus wraps up the discussion by saying, I'm really grateful we caught this now. Jennifer, you prevented us from going down a path that would have caused problems. This is exactly the kind of team dynamic I want, where we all feel responsible for quality and where we speak up when something doesn't feel right.
The weeks continue, and the team makes steady progress. They hit their milestones, they deliver quality work, and they maintain their collaborative spirit throughout. Then, one day, their manager calls Marcus in and says, I wanted to talk to you about your leadership performance on this sub-project. I've been really impressed. More than that, I've noticed how your team functions. There's a really positive energy. People seem engaged, and you're getting results. How are you thinking about your career development?
Marcus realizes he's being asked about his future. The conversation naturally flows into discussing bigger opportunities. His manager says, I think you're ready for more responsibility. How would you feel about eventually moving into a senior project manager role? That would mean managing multiple teams and larger initiatives.
Marcus responds thoughtfully. I'm really honored that you're suggesting that. I want to be honest about something, though. I don't think I want to move away from hands-on work completely. I've really enjoyed building a strong team with Jennifer and David and others. I love the technical problem-solving aspect. So if I'm going to take on more responsibility, I'd want it to be in a way that lets me keep doing that kind of work too. Could we maybe explore a hybrid role where I manage some projects, but also stay involved in the strategic work and some of the hands-on execution?
This is such a mature career conversation. Marcus isn't just accepting everything his manager is offering. He's being thoughtful about what kind of work he actually wants to do. He's being clear about his preferences, and he's proposing an alternative that might work better for him.
His manager responds, That's actually really refreshing to hear. A lot of people immediately jump at the title and the bigger role without thinking about what they actually want. I think a hybrid approach could work. Let me think about what that might look like, and we can talk more next week.
So a couple of weeks pass, and Marcus is still running his sub-project. One Friday afternoon, his team finishes all their work. They've delivered everything on schedule and on budget, and the quality is excellent. Marcus sends a message to his team. Hey everyone, I wanted to take a moment and acknowledge what an incredible job you all did on this project. Jennifer, you brought strategic thinking and attention to detail that kept us on the right track. David, the technology implementation you handled was flawless, and you demonstrated such a strong commitment to learning and growth. We accomplished everything we set out to do because we worked together so well.
Jennifer responds, Marcus, this has honestly been the best project experience I've had here. I felt valued, I felt heard, and I learned so much. Thanks for being such a great leader. David adds, Yeah, I second that. I came into this company feeling totally overwhelmed, and now I feel like I actually know what I'm doing. I'm genuinely excited about the next project.
That Friday evening, Marcus takes his team out for drinks to celebrate. It's informal, it's fun, and it's a chance for them to debrief and celebrate their success. During the evening, different team members keep coming up to Marcus and saying things like, "That project was awesome. I really want to work with you again. You're a great leader."
And this is the ultimate payoff of good communication and leadership. It's not just about getting the project done. It's about creating an experience where people feel valued, where they do their best work, where they want to continue working together. That's what good communication creates.
Now, we've been following Marcus and Jennifer throughout this series, and I want to bring back one more scene because it shows how foundational communication skills set the stage for everything else. A month after the project ends, Marcus and Jennifer are having lunch together, and they're reflecting on the experience.
You know, when we started this project, I never thought we'd become such a good team. I remember when we had that disagreement about the data section, I wasn't sure how we'd get past it. But the way you handled it, acknowledging my point, finding a solution together, that's when I realized we could work through anything.
Marcus responds, I was honestly nervous about that moment too. I remember thinking, okay, we've got a real disagreement here, and I don't want it to damage our relationship. But you made it so easy to resolve because you approached it collaboratively. You didn't make it about being right, you made it about solving the problem.
That's exactly it. And that's what I think is different about this workplace compared to my previous jobs. Here, we actually value that collaborative approach. We're not trying to make each other look bad or win arguments. We're trying to solve problems together.
This conversation between Marcus and Jennifer encapsulates everything we've been discussing throughout this entire series. Professional success isn't about knowing all the right vocabulary. It's not about using perfectly correct grammar. It's about understanding how to build relationships, how to communicate clearly, how to handle disagreement, how to give and receive feedback, and how to create environments where people want to do their best work.
And all of that starts with the small things. Using softer language, being collaborative, explaining your thinking, offering solutions instead of just identifying problems, following up on agreements, appreciating people's contributions. These aren't complicated skills. They're available to anyone who decides to focus on them.
Let's dive deeper into something we touched on earlier but deserves more exploration: email communication. Because honestly, email is where a lot of professional communication happens, and knowing how to write emails that are clear, professional, and appropriately warm can set you apart significantly. Let me show you some email scenarios that come up frequently.
The first scenario is what we call the status update email. This is when you need to tell your manager or team members what you've been working on, what you've accomplished, what's coming next. A lot of people make these too formal or too casual. Let me read you two versions of the same status update.
Version 1, the too formal approach. To all stakeholders, I am writing to provide an update regarding the progress of the website redesign project. As of the current date, I have completed the following tasks. The user experience wireframes have been finalized. The initial technical architecture documentation has been prepared. The competitive analysis research has been collected and organized. The following tasks remain outstanding. The client feedback integration requires attention. The detailed specifications documentation must be completed. The development timeline must be established in coordination with the technology team.
Hey team, wanted to give you a quick update on where we are with the website redesign. We've gotten the UX wireframes finalized, which is a big milestone. We've also prepared the initial technical architecture and compiled all our competitive research. The main things we're still working on are integrating client feedback and finishing up the detailed specifications. I'm planning to kick off the development timeline conversation with the technology team next week once we have the specs locked down. Should be in good shape by then. Let me know if you need anything else.
See the difference? The second email is shorter, it's friendlier, it uses we language, it explains the reasoning, and it's actually more informative because it talks about what's coming next and what the timeline looks like. The phrase "should be in good shape by then" is way more natural than "the development timeline must be established."
Here's another common scenario: the request for feedback email. Imagine you've created something, a proposal, a design, a strategy document, and you need input from someone else. Version 1. Dear Margaret, I have completed the initial draft of the Q3 marketing strategy document. I am requesting your professional review and critical feedback on this deliverable. I would appreciate your evaluation of the proposed initiatives, budget allocation, and timeline. Please provide comprehensive comments by Friday. Regards, Marcus.
That sounds like Marcus is asking for a formal court review.
Here's the real version. Hi, Margaret. I've put together a first draft of the Q3 marketing strategy, and I'd love to get your thoughts before we move forward. I'm particularly interested in hearing if you think the proposed initiatives align with where you want to take the brand. And obviously, tell me if you see any issues with the budget or timeline. Would you have time to take a look and give me some feedback by Friday? Thanks so much.
This version is so much warmer. He says, I'd love to get your thoughts, which is collaborative. He's specific about what feedback he wants. He wants to know if initiatives align with brand direction. He says, obviously, which shows he understands there might be practical constraints. And he frames the deadline as a question. Would you have time? Rather than as a demand.
Here's another one that comes up a lot, the bad news email. You have to tell someone something they don't want to hear. Version 1. I regret to inform you that the project will not be completed by the agreed-upon deadline. Due to unforeseen complications, the delivery date must be postponed. I anticipate completion by the following Friday. Please advise on your availability to discuss this matter.
Oof, that sounds like you just got fired. Version 2. Hey Sarah, I wanted to give you a heads up on something. We're running into more complexity with the integration testing than we initially expected. I don't think we're going to make the original Friday deadline, but I'm confident we can deliver solid work by the following Friday. I know that might create some issues on your end, so I wanted to reach out now rather than wait until Thursday to tell you. Let me know if you want to jump on a quick call to talk through the implications. I'm here to help problem solve.
This version is so much better. He uses heads up, which shows he's being proactive. He explains the why. More complexity with integration testing. He gives a new timeline immediately. He acknowledges the impact on the other person. I know that might create some issues on your end. And he offers to help problem solve rather than just dumping bad news.
This is crucial for professional relationships. When you have bad news, you can't just deliver it and walk away. You need to explain it, you need to own it, and you need to be proactive about solutions. Let's talk about one more scenario that comes up really often, the clarification email. You're confused about something, and you need to ask for help understanding.
Dear Robert, I require clarification on the recent modifications to the project scope. The revised project parameters are not clearly defined, and I need explicit instructions on how to proceed with my assigned responsibilities. Please provide detailed explanation of all changes made. Regards, David.
That sounds like David is accusing Robert of being unclear. Version 2. Hi, Robert. I was looking back at the scope document, and I think I might be missing something. I want to make sure I understand the recent changes correctly. Could you help me understand the new timeline for the client deliverables? And I want to make sure I know which aspects of the original proposal are still in scope versus which ones have been cut. I probably should have clarified this sooner, so I appreciate your patience. Let me know what works for you. Happy to chat or grab a quick email back. Thanks.
This version is so much better. He's taking partial responsibility. I probably should have clarified this sooner. He's being specific about what he's confused about, the new timeline for deliverables, and what's in scope. He's giving Robert options for how to respond. Happy to chat or grab a quick email back.
I think the pattern is clear by now. Effective professional emails have certain characteristics. They're personal, not robotic. They acknowledge the other person's perspective and time. They're specific about what you want or need. They show consideration for the impact on the other person. They offer options when possible, and they're appropriately warm but still professional.
One more quick tip about emails, the subject line is really important. A bad subject line is something generic like project update or question. A good subject line is specific. Instead of project update, you might write Apollo project, week 3 progress and next steps. Instead of question, you might write need your input on wireframe direction. The subject line should tell the reader exactly what the email is about so they can prioritize.
And here's a final email tip. If your email is more than 3 paragraphs, you should probably just have a conversation instead. Emails are good for keeping things on record and for asynchronous communication. But if something is complex enough to need a lot of explanation, a quick call or in-person conversation is usually more efficient and builds better relationships.
Of course, we can't talk about modern workplace communication without addressing the reality that a lot of this communication now happens remotely. Remote work has changed how we communicate in some interesting ways. The same principles apply: clarity, collaboration, relationship building, but the medium changes things slightly.
Let's talk about video calls first. Video calls are where a lot of synchronous communication happens now, and the dynamics are different from in person. For one thing, there's more silence. In person, if there's a pause in conversation, it doesn't feel as awkward. On a video call, silence can feel really uncomfortable, and people often jump in to fill it.
When you're on a video call and you need to disagree with someone, the same principles apply. You validate their point, you present your perspective, you offer alternatives. But the execution is slightly different. You might say, "That's a great point, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I want to make sure I understand your thinking. Can you walk me through your logic a bit more?" This gives you time to think about your response and shows you're genuinely considering their perspective.
Here's something else that's different with remote communication. Because you can't see body language and tone is harder to read, you need to be extra clear about your intent. If you say something that could be interpreted negatively, in person, your facial expression and tone might soften it. On a call, that safety net is gone, so you need to be more explicit.
For example, instead of saying, "I'm not sure that approach will work," you might say, "I appreciate the thinking behind that approach. I want to make sure I understand how it addresses the technical constraints we discussed." You're being more explicit about your concern while maintaining collaboration.
Chat and instant messaging are another big part of remote communication, and these have their own norms and expectations. The key thing to understand is that chat is usually for quick, casual communication. If something needs more explanation or is more formal, email is better. If something is complex or sensitive, a call is better.
But within chat, the same communication principles apply. You still want to be warm and collaborative. If someone sends you a message asking for help, you don't just respond, "No," or "I can't." You might say, "I'm swamped with something urgent right now, but I can help you with that this afternoon. Can you wait until like 3 p.m.?" You're being considerate and offering a solution rather than just refusing.
Here's something interesting about remote communication. Because people are more isolated, recognition and appreciation become even more important. In an office, you might spontaneously chat with someone at their desk and acknowledge their good work. Remotely, that doesn't happen as naturally, so you need to be more intentional about it.
A lot of remote teams are finding that sending quick messages like, "Great job on the report," or "I saw you jumped in to help David with that problem, really appreciated it," actually strengthens the team more than you'd expect. These little acknowledgments build culture, even when people are physically separated.
Let's talk about asynchronous communication for a moment. Because of remote work and global teams, a lot of communication happens asynchronously. Someone sends a message, and the other person responds hours later. This has its own challenges. You can't have a quick back-and-forth conversation. Everything takes longer.
The key to effective asynchronous communication is being really thorough and clear the first time you communicate something. Instead of sending a message that says, "Can you look at this file?" you might send, "Hey, I've attached the wireframes for the mobile redesign. I'm particularly looking for feedback on the navigation structure. Does it flow intuitively? And let me know if you see any issues with how the information is organized. I need to finalize this by end of day tomorrow, so whenever you can get to it today would be great. Thanks."
You're giving context, you're being specific about what you need feedback on, you're giving a timeline, and you're being appreciative. That way, when they respond, they can give you exactly the feedback you need without requiring multiple back and forths.
Here's another aspect of remote communication that's important. Over-communication is actually better than under-communication. In an office, people overhear conversations and get context about what's happening. Remotely, nobody overhears anything, so you need to explicitly communicate more.
For example, if you're blocked on something and waiting for someone else to provide information, you might send a message saying, "Hey, I'm ready to move forward with the next phase, but I'm waiting on the client's feedback on the brand guidelines. Once I have that, I can move pretty quickly. Just wanted to give you a heads up on the timeline." You're over-communicating, but that prevents surprises and keeps everyone aligned.
And here's something about remote meetings specifically. Remote meetings have some unique challenges. People get fatigued more quickly. Side conversations are harder. Building relationships is harder. So you need to be more intentional about meetings.
One thing we've seen work really well is having clear agendas and time limits for meetings. Instead of a vague team sync, you might have project status, 30 minutes, with specific agenda items. People know what to expect, and the meeting is more efficient. Within that, you might build in a few minutes for casual chat, like starting 5 minutes early and just saying, "How are you doing? How was your weekend?" to build some human connection.
And if you're presenting information in a remote meeting, you need to be extra clear and engaging because people's attention spans are shorter. Instead of just talking at people, you're asking questions, you're checking for understanding, you're making sure people are engaged.
The fundamental principles don't change when you move to remote work. You still need to be clear, you still need to be collaborative, you still need to build relationships. You just need to be more intentional about it because the medium doesn't happen naturally like it does in person.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground throughout this series. We've followed Marcus and Jennifer through their project journey. We've seen how they navigated meetings, emails, disagreements, feedback, and team dynamics. And through their story, we've been exploring the authentic language that native speakers actually use in professional environments.
I want to wrap up by helping you translate what you've learned into actual action. Because here's the thing, knowing these expressions and understanding these principles is one thing. Using them in real conversations is something else. The gap between knowing and doing is where most people struggle.
So let's talk about implementation. First, I want you to identify which of these communication scenarios is most challenging for you. Is it asking for help? Is it disagreeing with people? Is it writing emails? Is it giving feedback? Is it receiving feedback? Pick one area where you feel like your English is holding you back most.
Once you've identified that area, you need to create some kind of reminder system. Some people write key phrases on a sticky note and put it on their monitor. Some people set a phone reminder that says, "Use collaborative language today." Some people ask a colleague to help them, like, "Hey, I'm working on sounding less bossy and more collaborative. If you hear me being too directive, call me out."
The reason the reminder is important is because these communication patterns are habits. You've probably been communicating the same way for years. Changing that requires conscious effort until it becomes automatic. That usually takes a few weeks of deliberate practice.
Here's what I want you to do this week. Pick one phrase or expression from our series and use it deliberately multiple times. Let's say it's, "I was wondering if we could," a soft way to make a suggestion. Use that phrase in at least 3 different conversations or emails this week. Pay attention to how people respond.
You'll probably notice that they respond more positively than if you'd phrased it more directly. They might be more open to your idea. They might feel like you're collaborating with them rather than telling them what to do. That positive response will reinforce the new behavior, and you'll be more likely to use it again.
Here's another action step. Record yourself having a conversation if you can. If you have a video call or a meeting, ask if it's okay to record it for your own development. Then listen to yourself. How do you sound? Are you using collaborative language? Are you explaining your thinking? Are you building relationships or just transacting?
You might be surprised by what you hear. A lot of people think they communicate one way, but when they actually hear themselves, they realize they come across differently. Maybe you sound more harsh than you intend. Maybe you sound more formal than you realize. Maybe you're not asking enough questions.
And here's something really important. Don't beat yourself up if you don't get it perfect. Communication skills develop over time. You're going to have conversations where you could have handled it better. That's okay. What matters is that you're paying attention and trying to improve.
I also want to encourage you to study people who communicate well. In your workplace, who are the people that everyone likes to work with? Who are the people that seem to navigate difficult situations smoothly? Pay attention to how they communicate. What phrases do they use? How do they handle disagreement? How do they ask for help? Model those behaviors.
And please, please, please don't think that any of this is about being fake or manipulative. These communication strategies aren't about tricking people into liking you. They're about genuinely respecting the other person, about being clear in your communication, and about building relationships based on collaboration rather than hierarchy.
Because here's what we saw with Marcus and Jennifer. When they communicated well, the work got better. The team functioned better. People wanted to work together. The project succeeded. That's not manipulation. That's effective leadership and teamwork.
I want to give you some specific reflection questions to think about over the next week. First, think about the last time you asked someone for help. How did you ask? Could you have used softer language? Could you have shown more consideration for their time? Next time you need help, try using, "Do you have a sec?" or "I hate to bother you, but," or "Would you be willing to help me with something?" See how it feels.
Second reflection, think about the last time you disagreed with someone at work or gave them feedback. Did you start by validating their point? Did you explain your reasoning? Did you offer an alternative? Or did you just say, "That won't work," or "I disagree"? Next time you disagree with someone, remember to say, "I see your point, but," or "That's a fair idea, and I wonder if we could also consider," or "I appreciate the thinking, and here's another angle."
Third reflection. When was the last time you had difficult news to deliver? A missed deadline, a budget overrun, a problem on a project? How did you handle it? Did you just deliver bad news? Or did you explain the situation, take responsibility where appropriate, and offer solutions? Next time you have bad news, remember to do all three.
And finally, think about your last email to a colleague. Was it warm? Was it specific? Did you respect their time? Was it clear about what you needed or wanted? Next time you write an email, read it before you send it. Imagine you're the person receiving it. Would you feel respected? Would you understand what I need? Would you feel like we're collaborating or like I'm commanding you?
You know, the beautiful thing about all of this is that these communication skills don't just help you at work. They help you in every relationship, with friends, with family, with romantic partners. All of these principles about clarity, collaboration, and respect apply universally.
And here's something else. When you develop these communication skills, you become more confident. You're not worried about how you're coming across because you know you're being thoughtful and respectful. You're not anxious about conversations because you know how to navigate them. That confidence shows up in everything you do.
So to wrap up, here's your action plan. 1. Identify one communication scenario that challenges you. 2. Create a reminder system to help you practice. 3. Use one phrase or expression deliberately multiple times this week. 4. Reflect on your communication patterns and notice where you could improve. 5. Study people who communicate well and model their behavior.
And most importantly, be patient with yourself. You're not going to master all of this overnight, but if you practice consistently, if you pay attention, and if you genuinely care about understanding and respecting the people you work with, your communication will transform. And when your communication transforms, your professional life transforms with it.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through workplace English with Marcus, Jennifer, and everyone at their company. We hope you feel like you have tools now that you can actually use. Real tools, practical tools, tools that work because they're based on how native speakers actually communicate.
If this episode was helpful, please share it with people in your life who are learning English or who want to improve their professional communication. And if you have topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please let us know. We read every comment and every message.
Until next time, remember, good communication isn't about perfect grammar. It's about respect, clarity, and genuine collaboration. So go out there, practice these expressions, pay attention to how people respond, and keep getting better. You've got this.
Thanks for listening to the English Conversation Podcast. We'll see you next time.